In order to further deepen our understanding of the lens blur filter, let's go ahead and explore how we can modify the focus in this photograph of the Getty Center in Los Angeles, California. Well, one of the first things that we want to do, of course, is typically copy our background layer. You'll notice here in the Layers panel, we have a duplicate version of that background. There's a before and after, no difference between those two layers. Next, we go to our Channels panel, and here we create a new alpha channel. And I have one in here. It's simply a gradient which goes from white down to black. You notice also that this gradient travels pretty far. A lot of times when you're working with this, it's nice to have that great big transition rather than a small transition. To create a gradient like this, just grab your gradient tool, and then here it's a linear gradient, and then just go ahead and click and drag across an area so that you can have that particular effect. In this case, we'll just go ahead and drag across that to have nice white up there, black down at the bottom. All right, well, click on the RGB channel and then go back to your Layers panel. In the Layers panel, we'll navigate to our Filter pull-down menu. You know what we're going to choose, right? It's Blur and then Lens Blur. In the Lens Blur dialog, what we want to do is choose our source. In this case, it's Alpha 1. It's that channel that we have there. And in this case, the brightness is much too bright in this out of focus area. So for starters, I'm just going to bring that way back, increase my threshold. Just want to soften up that overall brightening effect because that didn't look very good. Next, what we can do is actually click on different areas of the image. And as we click through the photograph, we can start to affect the focus in some interesting ways. Here I'll click off Invert, and then I'll click on these chairs perhaps back here. You can see how this area is in focus and this other area surrounding is out of focus. What happens if we click a little bit further forward? Well, now this chair is sharp and these are out of focus. Sometimes it's fun to increase your radius as well. As you increase that, what you'll see is a more dramatic effect. So you can really see, yeah, right here is sharp. In this little area and here, all of that's out of focus. Well, in this case, that's a bit over the top, so I'll go ahead and decrease that radius. I like something perhaps a little bit more subtle, but nonetheless really drawing attention to this central area here on this table, and then the other areas are out of focus. It almost makes it look like a miniature set in a sense. All right, well, I'll just dial in my radius, a little bit of a blade curvature there, just softening up those edges on the blades, and I think that looks pretty good. Next, we'll click OK in order to apply that lens blur. Well, the great thing about this is now we have our before and then our after. And sometimes, you know what you discover is, hey, yeah, I like this effect, but I don't quite like having this chair out of focus and these other chairs. Well, no big deal. Simply click on the Add Layer Mask icon, grab your brush tool. You want to paint with black, so we'll go ahead and press the X key to exchange those two. And then I want a much smaller brush, so I'll right click or control click. I'll decrease my brush size there, make it a little bit smaller. And then I'm just going to paint with black. And as I paint with black over these areas, you can see that these areas are now having that original amount of sharpness. We can bring that in, brush a little bit bigger here, and just going to paint through this. And again, I'm just painting away this effect in a few little areas just to create a more stylized, perhaps unique look here. I'll just go through this image, bringing in a little more sharpness here in the foreground and whatnot. And again, just having fun with modifying this in an interesting way in order to change this overall look of this particular image. You can also paint with different degrees of opacity in order to modify this as well. And here in this case, I'm just going to go through this and really quickly try to clean up this foreground area. And as I'm painting, I'm trying to evaluate if I like it or not. Here we have that before and after, primarily the background and the top up here. I don't like the top out of focus either, so I'm going to mask that away. And in this case, it's just kind of that building off there in the background, which is out of focus. Here you can see now that before and after. So you can use lens blur in some pretty interesting ways. We can, of course, also go to our mask panel. We can lower the density of that now and bring back some more of that out of focus effect. So here more and more of the image is out of focus, while the primary 100% out of focus is the background. This has a touch of that. Here's that before and then after. So all I want to do here is simply illustrate that when working with this filter, sometimes you'll find, you know what, you nail it right from the get-go. You don't need a mask. Shift-click that mask, get rid of it. It looks good. And in this case, I think it is pretty cool. Well, other cases, you may want to add a mask and then paint in the effect into particular areas or limit the effect in other areas in order to dial in the exact look that you're going for.